Okay, welcome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for attending ISS as well. What a great conference. I'm just impressed every time. This is my third time coming to ISS. I'm always impressed by the intelligence of the people that are walking around compared to me, and all of the things that we get to see and get to be a part of when we change people's lives with the products and services that we provide. It just blows me away every time I see it. I'm never going to get used to it. If I do, I don't want to get used to it, okay? I'm Bello. I'm, again, the moderator here today. I'm going to be facilitating these very intelligent people. You can see in a second here their titles and so forth, but what we've tried to do is to bring a panel of experts together to give you some information relative to best in class, relative to data, okay, relative to data. What I promise you is this, a few things. One, we are going to provide information with application so you don't leave here frustrated. Because I've been in sessions like this and you get all this information, no application, and you leave frustrated. That's why these folks, I kind of hand chose them. I don't think they hand chose me to do this, because I really believe these are the folks that I would call on if I had questions about data and how to use it in different areas. So first question, this is going to be participatory. This isn't Bello speaking and them speaking, so you've got to get engaged. Okay, so first question, just to see if you, after you just ate lunch, about 2 o'clock you're going to go into your coma, and I know that. So I'm going to just give you a quick test, okay? Just don't pay attention to the ink, but what color is this paper? It's not a trick question, I promise. What color is this paper? A little bit louder, okay, together. What color is this paper? White. One more time. What color is this paper? White. What do cows drink? We're dead. Forget it. We're done. Thanks for coming. You can leave now. It's not going to work. No. So listen, and the other thing I want to tell you too is this. This is not going to be a commercial about Atlas technology, even though you're going to see that on there. That's my commitment. That's our commitment to you, okay? This is not. This is data that's been collected over the past several years from a host of different providers that we've been able to collect that we think is very, very valuable to you as best in class, and that's why we're presenting it, okay? That's it. Next question. How many ATPs are here? Okay, PT/OT. Okay, next. How many of you work in a clinic setting? How many of you work in a complex rehab setting? There we go. And then last but not least, how many of you are in leadership, management? Okay, great. Beautiful, cross-culture. Okay, so if I turn this on, this should work, and it does. There's our illustrious panel, as you can see, left to right. Maxine Paul, co-founder of Telehealth Clinical Evals. Matt McPherson, he is the CEO and founder of Atlas Fios. Then you got Blaine Hunt. He is the CEO of Access Medical, and then you've got Diana Escalar, who is the Chief Innovation Officer at Atlas Technology. Again, can I say this loud and clear? This will not be a commercial about Atlas technology, okay? I'm just going to tell you that it's not, okay? I've drilled these people. I've drilled it into their head. They're not going to do it, all right? All right, so let's get going. Here are the main objectives. You're intelligent people. I'm not going to read everything for you, but there are going to be a few slides that I will read because I just think it's going to be important for you to get the impact overall of what I hope the panel can provide for you as valuable information. A few things here is, the main thing for me is, how do you apply this back into your business model, which ultimately, whether you're on the clinic side or you're on the complex rehab side, impacts the lives that we're privileged to be able to take care of, okay? That's the bottom line. That's what we're really, really after. All right, so participatory, remember? Even though you got the cow thing wrong. Let's try this one. What data are you reviewing today regarding patient care? Okay, in what areas? Great. Different segments. Okay, great. Anybody else? Ma'am. Perfect. Great. Okay. Diagnosis compared to equipment being prescribed. Great. Beautiful. Okay, what else? Follow-up calls. Perfect. Good job. I like that one very, very much. I think that's very, very important, right? Customer care, customer service. How are you tracking how long it takes to process your equipment orders? And see, to me, non-clinician, that's both sides. Okay, that's from the clinic aspect. because you're bringing the ATP in to work alongside of you. You work together, right? Come alongside of each other, inevitably to get a patient into a product or service that they need so they can leave and change lives, right? So this really impacts both sides. So what are some ways that you're doing that now to be able to track that? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Good job. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So that's great. How about this? How do you identify where the bottlenecks are? She just talked about comparing the data, right? So you're going to see numbers fluctuate periodically. And typically that implies there's a potential bottleneck. We've got something that went awry. How are you doing that? How are you measuring that and looking at that? Yeah. The big question is, are you doing it, right? Are you doing it? It's there, it's data, it's relative, it's important, but are we taking the time to sit back and look at the data and really take a look at how this is impacting our business? Better yet, regardless of business, how this is impacting the patient's life. Done, right? That's it. That's what we wake up every single day excited about. So here is some data, and I've got some questions for some of the folks, so you don't think it was just me that was going to speak. Diana, I'm going to ask Diana a couple of questions. First of all, I want you to take a look at this. Again, this is a compilation of data that we collected. Yes, this is just over the past couple of months. This is just from the beginning of March all the way to the end of March. But this is data, again, that's relative to several years of collection. And what you've got here, basically from left to right, is the payer. You've got the initiation type, custom rehab, the date of service, the allowed amount that's going to be there, intake, eval, auth, order, assembly, schedule, delivery, total, and then eval to delivery date, and then receiving delivery. I know this might be a little small, so if you want to move forward, you're not offending me because I couldn't see it from the back of the room and I've got contacts in. All right, so Diana, question number one that I've got for you is this. What is the importance of using technology to analyze the effectiveness of the workflow process?
The importance of using technology to gather and analyze your data is the time that it saves you, number one. Yeah, a lot of people in this industry are still plugging data into spreadsheets. Well, that takes time. The other half of that, or the other part of that, is that data, when you are manually working with it, becomes obsolete very, very quickly. So when you're utilizing technology to keep your data up to date, the technology is doing that for you. So first of all, you're saving the time, you're not doing the data entry, and you know that you're always working with live data. So the technology behind it is crucial.
And from your perspective, as we're looking at independents that are out there, et cetera, what data is available? I mean, what can we look at?
The short answer to that is everything. Really, that is the short answer. So the importance with that data that's available to you is what's important. So yeah.
Okay. Last one for you then. Okay. What data is available, and how does the provider determine for them and their business what really matters?
And that's, yeah, that's the important part. And you guys have mentioned it. It's you could have written our presentation for us, because the time tracking is what we're illustrating here today, and knowing the importance of that. I mean, you've got your standard numbers, E to D, but it's more important to dive into that and what determines the E to D, what makes the E to D. With your sales, it's not just those final numbers. With your collections, again, it's not just those final numbers. It's not just that final DSO, but all of the data that leads into that helps you solve your problems.
Great. The next one, Diane, I think I want to ask you and Matt a couple of questions on this one, if you don't mind. This is about eliminating the bottlenecks. And maybe, Diana, you can spend just a second or so and just kind of walk us through what this slide is representing for us. And then the question there is really the technology, the data that's here. What do you see as valuable that they should be looking at?
Right. So in the last slide you saw, that was specific to custom rehab. The other part of analyzing the data is appropriately segregating that data. So this slide is now looking at service and repairs. It's just illustrating that you wouldn't look at those two things together because it's apples and oranges, and it muddles your numbers, it muddles your averages. So it's the importance of also looking at things compartmentalized.
Okay. Matt, significant time difference in the days, I would say, that to complete a repair comparing to what you're an expert at, trained technicians versus non-trained technicians.
Yeah, so as far as looking at this slide, looking at service and repair, we have total days until it's completed. So each task that we're looking at, we're trying to identify how long is it taking from the point that it goes to that department to the point where it's cleared and goes on to the next portion. So for service and repair, when we look at how long does it take to complete a repair, it's when did it go to the tech? How long did it take for the tech to get to the home? Did he have to go back 2 or 3 times because he forgot parts or did an incorrect diagnosis? So I'm looking at, as the logistics person, how long is it actually taking that technician to do it? And does training and skills help reduce that amount of time? And so over the last 7 years of me doing technician training across the United States and also national exams for technicians, I can say that there is data that proves that technicians that are trained can complete service calls faster than technicians that are not trained. Part of it is being prepared, part of it is diagnosing correctly, but the other part is just time. The amount of time that it takes to service equipment is faster if you know what you're doing and you can complete it more efficiently. And that efficiency keeps us from redundancy of going back over and over and over again. So for my side to train technicians, the goal is reduce those days, get it as small as we can, get those customers taken care of and not having to take the equipment and bring it into the shop. So all of that stuff goes into this data of how can we reduce that amount of time to get that order cleared and moved on.
Okay, the thing that stood out to me as I reviewed this, and I think we talked about this last night even, is the receiving to delivery. Yep. I mean, as a provider, I've got to be looking at that, right? And what am I looking for when I look at those numbers? On here, we've got 1 at 51, 18, 17, 13, 7, 0, 9. What am I looking at there?
Yeah, I mean, that could be all over the board, and Diana can also help with the data that Atlas tracks, but it's whenever it went to that person in that department, that's how many days it's being collected before it's actually completed, meaning from the point I got it to the point that the repair was complete and we moved it on, that's the days that we're tracking. And if the average is, 20 days to clear a repair, that's not great. For our service departments, we're trying to reduce that to within the week that we're getting them if we can, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at, so now I'm going to tell the whole truth. I'm a sales guy, okay? That's all, I really am. I'm just a sales guy. So when I look at this and this, my question to you, ATP, complex rehab, salesperson, ATP, complex rehab, are you using this data to convince the clinics that you're working with how good of a job you're doing? Whether it's compared to whoever, I don't care what their name is, their title is, their size, I really don't care, it's irrelevant to me. But are you using this data? Because to me, again, I'm a non-clinician, I'm a sales guy, this speaks volumes. This is your report card at the end of the day. How am I moving from E to D? You're gonna have hiccups. I mean, you look back here, you got 129 days, 121 days. Everyone's gonna have that periodically, but I wanna show progress, that we're moving things through our process better, right? So if you're not using this to approach those clinics, those PTs, OTs, their management team, et cetera, why you should be the choice for complex rehab for them, I'll encourage you to consider it, okay? Now, we'll get it, I'll tell you some other stuff later on. All right, so show of hands, real quick, ready? Are you currently evaluating how long your intake process is actually taking? Yeah? Raise the hands, yes? I got a couple of hands raised. Good. And if you're not, consider it. It's not a bad thing. Next one. Do you currently have a workflow for your intake process? Good. Because the big thing there is, to me, as I've studied process management, okay, over the years, because I'm not just a sales guy, I'm also a manager, and I've managed businesses in our industry over the years. It is that process flow. That's where you identify those bottlenecks. The numbers indicate where you've got the bottleneck. The process flow then is what you're able to hold it up to the litmus test to say whether or not we're having a problem and what it is. Where did we lose it? right? The exercise that I still do, even though we're big technology, is I'll walk into my intake department and say, I'm a new eval. Walk me through what we do next. Walk me through. Let's do a little trip. And then what department? You will find amazingly that it goes from here and it goes to there and it goes from there. And there might be a couple of back and forths that really don't need to take place. That's one of my favorite exercises to do when I walk into a business, okay? All right, next. Intake process. Maxine Paul, I love this. This is a great slide for you. Again, just not going to, I am going to read a little bit of this because I just want you to see what we're looking at here completely. Obviously, date of service, right, the allowed, et cetera, intake, et cetera. But we're looking at document referral source, right, from documentation, the collection of the demographics, the triage of the patient's needs, verification of insurance, verifying the same and similar equipment on file, schedule the evaluation, and time between the scheduled date and the actual evaluation date. Maxine, we've got best practice numbers up here, right? Question for you is this, once I find it. Where are you? There you are. Why is it important to review your data to perform timely intake? And what matters? It should be on, Maxine.
Yes, so I was in operations for 25 years running our department. We had sales and service. So we'd separate those out. And intake is very important because what's the ultimate goal is to get the patient the equipment as fast as you can. And so when you get into these, you can identify problems of how many new referrals am I getting? How many of those are moving? What I'd like to do in my sales meetings, I don't know, do you guys all run sales meetings weekly? Look at how many new intakes, where they're at in this process. Well, we take a look at that, but we also look for the zeros, because the zeros tell me that somebody hasn't seen that patient, it wasn't scheduled, or somebody is missing a quote. So the sooner we get those quotes in, you'll see a dollar figure. So we sort of look at the highest dollar, lowest dollar. Zeros are another important one that a lot of companies don't look at. And that is where your bottleneck is. And so you want to find out what happened. How come this patient has been scheduled? How come the ATP hasn't sent in the quote? Or is it the manufacturer not getting back? I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this, but ultimately we're trying to get the patient the equipment as fast as we can. We're trying to look at the referral sources, because if we can't get the patient the equipment, you're not going to get the referrals. So ultimately, that's one of the important things.
Good answer. And I agree, intake is one of the most critical parts, right? So what are your recommendations then for us to improve this process?
So in data, I don't know, everybody's systems are different. If you can filter down on certain things, like if you want to just look at how many new intakes you have, you want to filter in like how many referrals are coming from this therapist or this clinic. Or if you want to take a look at your zeros, you can filter down to just those. Hopefully your softwares can do that. I also recommend that you meet weekly and educate your CSRs. Those are the people that help assist the ATPs, and have meetings. So you could do deep dives as to why that order is not moving. You want to know how many days that order, the intake to just that point of getting it to off. Then you want to say, if you see 120 days, what's going on? Let's take a look at that. I've looked at clinics or companies that have 200 days on there, and I'm like, how come this is sitting there? What's going on? So hopefully the staff puts the notes in, and you can take a look and see what's going on, and you can start over. You may need to start over. You may need to just try to see if the patient, what happened. So doing a deep dive is really important with your data. Go to your sales, run all those sales reports, carve out service, then do a meeting with your service department, and then don't combine them because it gets complicated that way. So those are my recommendations.
How often would you have that meeting? Weekly?
Every week.
Every week. And would you have like a recap, like on a monthly basis, just to kind of do a review?
Another thing is you go after your hot orders. So anything that that you need to push, and if it's already in process, you put that to the side. You focus on the ones that you need to start moving. So usually the first meeting's the hardest. It takes the longest. After that, every week you meet with them, and you're just working on the problem children, right? And you're just trying to solve the solution that you can get to that order. I look at the data as it's going to tell on everybody, right? It's that mean sister that's going to tell mommy or daddy, they're not moving this order. And so you can't hide from data, but if you don't have a system that can process your data this way, then you're going to be in the dark. And it's a visibility. So every manager should know how to look at their database and say, this is a mess, or you guys are amazing, right? So it gives you ability to also praise your staff.
Glad you said that, because I was just getting ready to, but you read my mind, so good job. Great minds think alike. All right, questions so far for the panel?
Well, I have a question. So I noticed this says Atlas Technology. So this is a software program that's just going to help you monitor and track your orders.
You walked in a little late, so let me share this with you real quickly. No, you're totally fine, totally fine, it's okay. This is not a commercial for Atlas.
No, I know it's not that.
Their logo happens to be on here because a lot of these people are part of that group, but we've taken holistic data that we've collected over the past several years of providers that we've worked with, and then some other data that's already out in the marketplace that we were able to get, and pulled that together to provide information to you with best practices. Okay, so it's not a commercial. Okay, fair? Good. Answer your question? Did I do okay? Okay, good, that's all that matters. My mom will be proud, I'm happy. All right, any other questions? That was good.
I think Ty.
Go ahead, Blaine. I'll get that young lady in the back there real quick.
I think Ty is a walking commercial. And so for him to say this is not a commercial, you are the commercial, Ty. He's not going to invite me back. This is intentional.
That was just what I was going to say. He's not coming back on this panel ever again. Goodness. Why did we invite him? Ma'am, can we ask you your question?
So, no, I'm just curious, how do you, I'm a clinician, I work for the Veterans Health Administration.
Thank you, as a veteran.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm curious how you see clinicians use data, whether it's Atlas data or other data.
Can I redeem myself?
Good luck.
As a clinician, you're part of the plan of care. So you give, you're a partner with us at dispensing the equipment. And if you don't know the timeframes, you might have more than one vendor choice. I'm a vendor. I own a company with a lot of very talented ATPs. And personality is one thing. We like certain people to work with, but the results matter. How long it's taking them to get your patients their product, and that product actually fits the patient and meets the medical needs very accurately, that should matter to you. And so it's very appropriate for you to ask for a report. How long has this patient been waiting for their equipment? Can I please have an update on the status of this order? And I want timeframes. Please use your data to help me know how well you're doing. I'd love you to ask that, because then you won't want to work with them anymore, and there's no commercials. So that's it.
And I left that out earlier because that really is the truth. Not only should we as a complex rehab company be giving you that data, if we're not, you should be asking for that data. That is our report card. So we want you to ask for that. Well, some of us want you to ask for that. Other of us don't want you to ask for that. Mike.
So you just stole that on me.
Great.
Those of us that are tracking it and want to share it, Matt, are glad to give it. Those that aren't glad to give it, we're probably.
And you clinicians, PTOT, you already know you're getting phone calls from the family, or significant other or something. Hey, what's up with this chair? We had our eval like a month ago. What's going on? What's the status? And that's another indicator. It's not measured on here. And what that is lack of communication to your provider. Your provider isn't necessarily, I'm going to be fair with the provider. Your provider isn't necessarily communicating back to the patient what's going on step by step by step. They believe that communication is, well, we did the eval, we sent out the quote, everything's rocking and rolling, that's great. Why not just I'm probably putting Blaine on the spot. Why not just a weekly phone call to that patient? Just let them know what's going on in the status of their chair. I mean, anybody today go get their oil change and not get an immediate customer survey when they're leaving the parking lot? We're a world of customer surveys. Just call them up and see how they're doing. Let them know where it's at. No harm, no foul. It's really a good thing, okay?
I have a question. Do you track outcomes?
We track, how long how long track our own internal process.
Yeah.
I was just curious, kind of like reverse engineering this data. If you ever have a clinician who's out, okay, I have this problem and I want to take the data to get their numbers for the problem that I'm experiencing, you know, kind of looking at it from the other end. There's data to support, you know, and maybe these are the metrics that are tracked, but if there's other metrics that are tracked.
Definitely. This is simply an example, you know, we could be in here for 4 hours. So we chose an example that a lot of providers aren't paying that close attention to. I love that you guys are, and several of you are, but there's your standard numbers. This is simply an example. Outcomes is certainly something that can and absolutely should be tracked, you know, so, yeah.
I would also say you might want to talk to your providers and say, I want a weekly update. And you can send that by email. And some of the softwares now can send you that information, like where it's at in the order, or maybe give you access to their system.
Great question. Thank you so much. All right. Here we go. Are you ready? Cows drink water, by the way. Calves, milk, maybe. Water. I'm just saying. We all know the evaluation process is a leading indicator, right? Okay. Lagging indicator is what? The quote, right? Eval, quote. Are you measuring the number of evals as compared to the number of quotes done by your each ATP? This is probably more for CRT. Think about it. Last week of the month, you're all scrambling in the complex rehab business to get everything in the system, right? In the system. Well, if you start measuring the number of evals that your ATPs are doing on a weekly basis compared to the number of quotes at the end of the month, it should be pretty close to even, except for the ones that they got yesterday. Probably didn't get the quote in yet, or maybe they did. Maybe they did. But as you go through the months, if you're already in March and now you're 14 quotes behind, how are we doing? So this is a little bit of a sales thing. I like to assign a certain number of evals and quotes and sales calls to ATPs. And then I monitor that to see how they're doing to this. Because if the leading indicator is the eval and the lagging indicator is the quote, now that's just the first phase. We know there's a bunch of other stuff in between. Then how are we measuring our ATPs? Okay? So think about that one. Next, evaluation process. This is Mr. Matt. I'm going to let Matt kind of dive into this if you don't mind, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Share some things about the ATP mobility evaluation, et cetera. Walk us through it.
Yeah, so as an ATP, looking at these timeframes, there's a lot of things that impact how quickly we get to an individual to do an evaluation, how soon we get the quote, and then moving on to the next process. And what I would like to do if I'm looking at a company is, are there ATPs that tend to perform better than others? And what are the barriers that the ATPs that are not performing as highly as the other ones, what are they facing? So this can be within your own company, but even company to company. And some of it is, if you're doing evaluations with therapists and you're having to meet them in a clinic, is do I have access to the loaners and the trials that I need, or do I have to wait? Do I have to get them from manufacturers? Is there a time frame that I'm waiting on other people to get the right equipment, or do I have access to that equipment? And then once I get to the evaluation process, am I, as the ATP, quick on getting that evaluation completed, turning in the quote within 2 days, or am I having a stack of folders in my van, and then at the end of the week I'm trying to get them all done? So that process of how that ATP is taking that order is really important for you as the manager. If you're managing these numbers, is Stan's doing great, he's 3-4 days in his evaluation process, or 8, or whatever the average is for your business, but we have John and he's taking a week and a half to 2 weeks. So let's talk to John and find out why is his barrier, even if they're in the same company, is he not getting that process through faster? Because what we want to do is ensure that the ATPs have the support that they need, the training that they need, the equipment that they need for the evaluation process, because at the end of the day, we don't want our customers waiting longer than they need to. And if we have the ability to fix these issues, all we need to do is just have a conversation. One person is able to do it quicker, what is the barrier to why you're not able to do it as fast? So looking at those issues is one thing that you as the operations manager can decide, okay, do we need more learner equipment so you're not waiting? Or is it the clinic that's delaying the time? So we need to find out, is there other resources? And, you know, I'll jump in a little bit to the question that Ty is about to ask, which is, you know, is there other alternatives that are now with COVID? We had, you know, telehealth become something that was very popular with our industry because we couldn't do a lot of that live evaluation. So is there other resources that we can use now at our disposal that can reduce a lot of that time that we were dealing with clinic evaluation time and, you know, product trials and whatnot? So sorry for taking that question early.
I'll dock it from your pay. Not a problem. No, good, very good. Yeah, thanks for that. Questions here? Evaluation process? Best in class numbers? As you look at your business, how you doing? Okay, global perspective. Global perspective. So good, bad in certain areas. That's fine. That's normal. Next. Now, I really hesitate to kind of bring up this slide because I know nobody in this room has problems with this at all. So, ever. We've never had prior authorization problems. What are some of the pain points we're experiencing now? I can say legitimately we live in a post-COVID environment right now, right? So how are prior authorizations from your perspective?
Private insurance is off. The denial rate is hard. The reason they deny is difficult. We have to stay on top of all.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Sir?
We eliminated prior authorization for repairs, service,
Free? Is that what you said, for free?
free. We're not doing wheelchair.
You don't do wheelchairs.
Because you wouldn't be able to afford it.
So how do you do CRT without a wheelchair? I'm just curious.
Robotic arms, power arm supports.
Okay, so you're doing more racing, aesthetics?
Prosthetics, quadriplegic, power wheelchair, robotic arms, which makes the
You must have really good margins in that.
we built the price in to the price at the beginning. And I think it's something that the wheelchair industry should do as well. Go back to CMS and say, we want to bump the price of a wheelchair by $4,000 and we'll cover repairs for free.
Mm.
Say,
Mm.
There's several problems with that. I mean, most of us, CRT, we don't even have a legitimate labor code. So the Department of Labor doesn't even recognize us as an industry. And then we've got CMS that mandates, you know, rules and regs for all of us that are doing any type of CRT. And we constantly are in competitive bidding and all of that other stuff. So for us to be able to get repaired away for free, we wouldn't be around to be providing you equipment.
not for free, they're building in the price.
Right, but we don't have that luxury, and we get a set allowed,
Why not?
we have to work around that.
Why
I
not
see
go
your
to
point.
CMS and say, let's make a deal?
I totally see your point. I don't think there's enough time or resources. Concur with me or disagree with me. Some fellows.
So for me, I think in theory it's a great idea.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think for the industry to unite and try to do that has been a struggle. Because everybody's pulling what they want and need instead of all of us working with them.
Anybody here of value-based or outcome-based?
Our biggest problem with prior authorizations is when our state Medicaids change the servicing agent.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go change, or you have to train the servicing agent.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, it is a big problem.
So the question I always ask when providers pose that to me, and they have posed that several times, is how often are you calling on the state Medicaid to meet those people and educate them on a regular basis? It's like It's like us communicating with the customer, what's the delay in them getting the chair or where we're at. We should be proactive and not reactive for that. Now, you get a new person that just hired on, you can't do anything about that. You've got to go and educate. But the rest of the people that are there, we should be visiting them. We should be educating them as much as we can. That's feasible. So, and including private insurances. By the way, all that data that we showed earlier, right? Your E to D and everything else, that's data that you can actually share with payers, right? Absolutely share with payers without question. Another sales/marketing aspect. Okay, authorization process. I think this is Miss Maxine. Max, I got a question for you. What advice would you give the folks to kind of solve some of the pain points that they've had in your experience as a provider yourself, those pain points that you all experienced as well?
So it depends on the payer. For Medicare, you know, they have their 10-day auth process. So you just have to make sure your paperwork is all in line. And everybody here probably knows that already. It's the private insurances, the back and forth, the peer-to-peers, you know, they approve partial approvals, things like that. So now that CMS has allowed us for the Medicare side to, it's a voluntary program where you can put the multi-power tilt only, or you can do all your electronics, you can send that into prior auth. And if they're Medis or they have a Advantage plan, those type of insurance companies, you can send it into Medicare first, get everything affirmed, then send it to your Advantage plans and say, Medicare's approved it. This contractor is saying yes, you're a contractor for CMS and you're saying no. So there's a conflict. I would take it all the way to CMS. And that's what I'm trying to advocate right now with NCART and that, because everybody here probably is experiencing the denials on tilt recline. They want to give them a lesser chair, and they want to then deny your electronics. And it's just a battle back and forth. So if you can get a doctor to work the peer-to-peer and advocate for the patients, that's one of my recommendations. Call them up yourself and beat them up. I mean, it's a battle. Private's a battle. Medicare is easy.
Why are we experiencing such a long time frame now with private pay as opposed to, I think pre-pandemic we were running pretty smoothly, as smoothly as could be. Why are we experiencing that a little bit more now, do you think?
I think the private side has always been there. You know, there's some states that have outsourced a second opinion to a company that will go out and do an independent review of that patient. So there's PTs and OTs will go to the house and then give the insurance company a report, and then they'll deny them for a lesser chair. And then you have to go back and forth and appeal. And in the meantime, the patient's suffering, right? So you have to try to either advocate. If your staff is not trained to be pushy, then you're going to end up, you know, saying, okay, we'll just give them this chair. And then the patient has a breakdown, and then now it's costing that payer a lot more money. I usually tell them, listen, what you're doing is you're trying to save Part B. So there's Part A and Part B, if everybody knows that. Part A is hospitalization, Part B is outpatient, and DME follows under that. And if you're cheating them on the Part B side, it's going to make the Part A side go way up when they have wounds and they have to go in the hospital for antibiotics and treatment and wound vacs and all of that. So, you know, try to learn how to teach your staff to fight on the front end. And also, if your patients can get involved, that's another thing, right? You have to get your patients mad enough to get on the phone with you and push them, or call their employer and say, listen, my insurance is denying me this equipment. You know, I try to pull everything I can out of a hat to
Good.
get it paid.
Good.
Or approved.
An encouraging thought for, ma'am, please.
Well, I have a question slightly off topic. I've agreed with all of these timeframes so far, and I think they're very reasonable, but the one on the face-to-face exam being 3 to 10 days, I'm just curious if anyone has input on how you achieve that.
That's a trade secret. It helps. Telemedicine really helps cut down timeframes. So you can get a patient seen by a doctor significantly faster. And some telehealth groups are organized to get the reports back to you quickly too. So that you've got to look at some of the innovation that's happening recently. And then it's all about training those clinicians, those clinics, about the timeframes. and that patients are hurting and they're suffering, that they needed the equipment before it was prescribed, before the doctor or clinician noticed the need, they were already hurting. So please get this back to me, doctor. This is urgent. And we're going to call you back tomorrow if you don't give it to us by the end of the day. And they'll call you again. And that you become the smiley, annoying, squeaky wheel.
There's the sauce.
I just want to say one thing. I think that time frame is for intake to face-to-face. So basically, once you do your intake, you want that patient to have an appointment immediately, right? So we encouraged our CSRs to ask them, when's your next appointment with your doctor, right? So that's a question you can ask the patient. Have you seen the doctor lately? Did you talk to them about needing a wheelchair? And if you have that, then the next step is go to the therapist or, do the telehealth. Some patients, when COVID hit, doctors were 3 months out. Well, they can't wait 3 months. So what's the alternative? So you can suggest patients can use telehealth. There's many companies out there doing it. But I would suggest telehealth because telehealth is faster, especially if you know a company that knows how to do it.
This is not a commercial.
I don't know. It's not a commercial, but I'm serious. Like there's so many ways to get your patients through, but
When you say telehealth, what doctor do you need? Their primary care, or we're finding a new doctor for them? Because where I'm at, a lot of these patients are on Medicaid. There's only so many doctors that accept their plan that will see them, that will get them in.
If you're working with a good telehealth group, they already have associate physicians that can see those patients independently. So part of the telehealth order, when you refer it, is they get seen by a physician who sees patients all day, every day for custom wheelchairs. Does not have to be, no.
Do you have a name of those telehealth companies?
Yeah, but not in this meeting because it's not a
See us-
commercial.
See us after, and we can help you. See us after, and we'll help you with that, yes.
One thing we've seen, and I don't mind saying, is that they're denying all your electronics on your multiple chairs, but now they got the new trick that they're taking longer. Your PA, there's only so many days. By the time you get to the ALJ, the PA's expired, then I had to go set a whole new foot of PA. Something that we won the ALJ, and now they are going after the ALJ. Because if they try and pay $6,000 more. That's their new trick. If your PAs are expiring, if you win, PA's expired, they make you start all over.
So I'm really mean to health plans, and I do it in a really nice way, and I make people feel stupid in a nice way. But the point is there are authorities in every state that hold health plans accountable, and you call them and you move your way up the top and you tell them, I know what you're doing. If you keep doing this, I'm going to have you reviewed and audited for this because you're hurting patients.
also all the contractors have a scorecard. So the more you complain to CMS, that scorecard goes up, then they're going to be reviewed. They can lose that contract if there's enough complaints. So we just need everybody to start complaining.
It's not a perfect system. Just isn't.
We just
right?
need to all get together and go down there and just tell them,
Just don't bring Blaine. I think he might get physical. No comment. Order and assembly process, Mr. Matt. This is you, without question. It's a lot of moving parts. No pun intended. A lot of moving parts in here. Give us a lowdown on this.
So, 6 months to a year after we've seen the patient, we now have authorization to order the equipment, hopefully less than that. The order process of getting it into the system, ordering the equipment from the manufacturer, receiving the equipment, assembling the equipment, setting it up and delivering it. That whole process has a lot of variables that impact how long that takes. So it's a very large, scale of order to delivery. When you have an ATP that's doing evaluations, are they aware of ordering timeframes? So, some manufacturers are taking longer than others. So are they aware if they have two products that are appropriate for this patient, that one is going to take 2 weeks longer than the other? Are they, are your ATPs familiar with the timeframes? And a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are, this is the right product. I'm ordering this product because I'm comfortable with it, but it's going to take 2 weeks longer to get to that patient. So those kinds of things are really important as an ATP to be aware of, okay, this product is going to take longer. So maybe I should use this product if they're going to be comparable. So training your ATPs is really important on ordering process as far as how long it's going to take to get the equipment. Once it's in the shop, then it's, do we have trained staff that's setting the equipment up? Do we have, an efficiency of how quickly we're getting the equipment set up before it's being delivered? And then do we have, a process of getting that equipment out as quickly as we can? And I know a lot of companies, once they get the equipment, are usually fairly quick to get it out because, they want to get it to the patient. But making sure that it's as efficient as we can from the logistics side is really important to cut down those days. So we're not leaving it in the warehouse for 3 or 4 days sitting there until we can get it put together and delivered.
Okay. Questions? Delivery process. I asked Maxine to kind of talk about this one a little bit for us, if she could. Question number one, Maxine, is why is it important to have a complete and thorough delivery process? And what does that look like to be timely?
Well, if your software can look at how long that order's been in your warehouse when you received it, you want to try to keep an eye on that, because as you all know, the invoice comes out as fast as they ship the chair to you, right? Or the part. So as that starts ticking, you want to make sure you're scheduling with your patients and you want to get them out. You have auths that are going to expire. You're at risk of a lot of things. So patients can pass away, patients can go somewhere else because they're upset that it's taking too long. So you really need to have a deep dive into that if you have any bottlenecks. I don't know if anybody has any issues that they're experiencing they want to ask a question about, but that's basically the most important thing is the delivery, getting that out as fast as you can. The minute it hits your floor, build it and deliver it. And conditions are changing. Like I said, patients will end up in the hospital and you're like, oh, I missed that window, And we're all trying to hit our budgets. Everybody has a budget they have to hit. So you just got to be focused on those deliveries and make sure the auth is for a purchase. If you set it in, that's another thing. Everything has to be examined before you deliver, right? You have to look at all your paperwork. Was it approved? Is it approved for purchase or rental or both? Or, what's the time frame?
There's a lot more that goes into what I'm about to say, but with providers that I've worked with over the past, what I've always encouraged them to do is to have a pre-delivery review. So the week in advance of next week, right now we would be reviewing next week. We would know basically from our manufacturers what is due in, knowing that could fluctuate a little bit. Then we start planning and scheduling accordingly with our techs and so forth for delivery, and or the ATP might be doing delivery. But I want to take a preemptive look at that the week before so that it's not a surprise Monday morning when we come in and we've got this. We pretty much know a good layout for the next week. There's going to be some variables. It's not perfect, but it's better than not. I mean, for example, Diana, she didn't bring her battery charger for her electronic watch, so she had to order one from Amazon. She's been tracking it all day long. It's pretty obnoxious, to be honest, but she's been tracking it all day long. So we can get that through the evil empire, the A to Z guys. So why can't we track that on equipment and then again be proactive in our business so that we can take care of the patients just a little bit? All right, finally, we saved the best for last, the end result. Blaine Hunt. So I got a couple of questions. As a provider, active provider today, working out there, timeframes, how important are they to you, to your business, and ultimately to your clients as you consider overall business results?
So the end result in delivery has happened. Patient has received the product. And if it was done timely and efficiently, there were no complaints, no extra inbound phone calls. There weren't pressure sores that developed because of negligence on my company. There weren't pending lawsuits. There weren't any of those problems. When you're efficient and timely in healthcare, you're also profitable in healthcare. So your bottom line and the black and the thickness of how black your bottom line is based on these timeframes. So as you're efficient and you track it and you look for outliers and you say, this one is slow, what's wrong? I mean, if you look at the numbers, you have a Medicare and Medicaid, which is a crossover claim. What's that bottom number? How many days was that? 115?
120, 116, sorry.
116
delivery.
days. So that is incredibly slow. Before I started using data like this to help me run my business, In 2020, my intake to delivery for all payers was 132 days. In 2021, with this data, no commercial, with this information that at my fingertips to track and to assign employees to departments and give them a number of days that they could complete their tasks. And if they're behind on that task, you go to them and say, I'm holding you accountable. You're 10 days late on these 4 orders. Why? And the system doesn't care. It doesn't have a favorite employee. If there's something in the data saying that this is slow, and I can go to that data and correct that employee, get the order back on track, we call them problem orders. A good order is everything's fine. But when there's a delay on a time frame, it's a problem order. Why is there a problem? Why is that poor patient waiting when they already needed it? So efficiency and tracking timeframes, incredible what it does to your bottom line. And it's also amazing what it does to customer satisfaction. And by the way, we were talking about quotes earlier for ATPs. If an ATP sees a patient and then 6 other patients, and they wait 10 days to quote what they saw 10 days ago, and they took really good notes, they still can't remember. And then that equipment doesn't fit as well. So not only does it have to be fast, it has to be accurate. Thank you.
Blaine, what are your timeframes now?
Okay, so what did I end at? I told them 2021.
Yeah, you
So
you
I
give
didn't
them-
tell you. So we went from 132 to 102 to the next year. It was 62 days. And all those years, we doubled at least 50% in our number of orders. And it wasn't a small mom and pop company. When you do it little, like you were saying earlier, you were kind of knocking the nationals how slow they are. I'm gonna quote you on that because I agree with you. But when you were talking about that, you said as a small company, as clinicians, don't rule out the little companies because the big nationals will tell you how wonderful they are. And they have the money to tell you how wonderful they are, but they're often the slowest in the room. So time frames today for me, I can get a Medicare order done inside of 30 days. It does happen for CRT. So those are the good ones, the really special ones. And a lot of them are 6 weeks. And so it's incredible to have all of my orders on a big scale around 62 days, which is to answer your question. And the data did it for me because I was already motivated. I already wanted to help the patient. I came from air ambulance and life flight. Urgent response is who we are. We want to move quickly. We want to help the patient. But without the data, it was just impossible to track that many orders.
Sir.
I have a question. You mentioned the balance quote. Since you're aggressive on your ops, what is your expectations of your?
My ATPs used to complain about working for bigger corporations, and they would say, it takes so long for my orders to get out. The hardest thing about my situation is I can't get my orders out. You know what they complain about at Access Medical? Gosh, you guys push us so fast. You want your quotes so fast. You're always on me. I can't, and then I say, but look at your commission. Look at your compensation. Look at your reputation. Look at the clinician's review of you because you're fast now. No more slow. If it's going to be slow because of a health plan or some outside factor, we can control our companies. So we have to control our employees and those timeframes. So I'm often getting the quote the same day. And so I'm deciding with the client, my job as an ATP is not let them try 20 different items. It's to help guide them to the one that really meets their medical needs. And we decide usually on the spot. And then we're quoting same day or next day. So after 48 hours, I'm really not happy if the quote hasn't come back. And I do let them go one day past that. But after that, we're having HR meetings. Not really, but you get it, right?
Yeah. And as an ATP myself for a lot of years, I've been in both environments. The environment where it took a long time to get equipment put through and ordered and authorized, and then companies where it was very efficient. And I will say the companies that were slower, I spend a lot more time triaging therapy calls and customer calls throughout my day instead of doing evaluations, trying to tell them where the equipment is and calling the CSR, where are we at? Just because I didn't have the data in front of me, I had to find out from somebody else. So as an ATP being efficient, if I'm having to carry, and I would have 150 active patients at one time when it was very slow in CRT, I'm getting 50 calls every week when things are being delayed a month and a half, 2 months on top of what they already should be. So for me to be efficient and use my time efficiently, everything else has to be efficient. Otherwise, I'm bogged down by phone calls and calling people back all day long instead of doing my quotes.
If your phones are ringing all the time and the people who are answering your phones are answering them like they have a headache because they're frustrated, it's just a sign for us and my company that we weren't communicating. We weren't giving data to clinicians and to families and patients so that they had an update. One time we had a therapist come in and give a suggestion to just pick up the phone and give an update to every patient. And that took a couple of days to do it. And after we were done updating everyone, the phones stopped ringing. So it's about communication and updates, and then you don't have complaints and you don't have disgruntled customers and clients. It's communication, and data helps you do it.
I think if you can meet on a weekly basis and you can hit those bottlenecks, and yeah, just the outliers, the zeros, look at the zeros. Like you can look at your work in progress and you can say, oh, I have $2 million there, but how many zeros do you have? Do you have 20 zeros? How much is that worth? It's a lot more than the 2 million. So those are the things you need to focus on, and you need to sit that ATP down and say, I need these quotes today. And if you can't get them today, if I give them to somebody else to redo, you're going to lose that patient. Or you can leave the patient's house, sit in your van and get the quote on the phone. That's the real thing they need to do. Some people are motivated by money, some people aren't. You just got to, are they hungry or are they not? You know, you have to know your people. So that's another big thing. And the perfect world for me is, I'd say, hire everybody a driver. So as soon as they get in the car, they can get their quotes, right? On the way to the next patient. And they'd be spoiled. They'd have someone pull the chairs in and out for them, and they can be in there and talk, and someone's loading and unloading and bringing in different demos, you know, that's the perfect world. But
Oh, great.
I like your idea.
especially for women
You know,
ATPs.
everybody wants you to go on